Who are with us here this morning. Thanks so much, bright and early, one of the first to arrive on time. Also to the executive committee who are with us, and to all of you, our distinguished guests. Welcome one and all. One of the most exciting days for me of the year, to be honest, as you can tell. It's the third edition of SGD Industry Day, and I have to thank IMDA for always bringing me on board. I tell you, I feel like you're my surrogate mentors in some way. This is always my classroom. I come here and my mind is blown. We get to meet the key movers and shakers in tech, in business, really driving the digital economy. So hopefully you've all come hungry and open to learn. Just be open, no matter where you are in your business, in terms of your digital transformation journey. There will be so much said today in terms of content and insight. Something will stick, something will trigger you to really go out there and make some new changes and actions in your strategy moving forward. And to be honest, I really feel there is no better time to really be talking about digital transformation and the future economy, because yesterday in this very room, and I love stats, I was hit by what is very, very staggering. 2019, a total of almost $1.2 trillion is being invested in digital transformation. Now that is a big deal. First of all, that's money I can't even fathom. But the reason why it's important is because that is a 20% jump from what the world has been investing in 2018. So if you haven't started yet, it is time to get on the bandwagon. Do not be afraid. You are not alone. We've got a lot of support systems in place, IMDA initiatives, which we'll find out about, lots of opportunities to collaborate. Do not fear that you must do this on your own. Absolutely not. Connect with people, network with people, collaborate with people. Many of them are actually in this room. All right? So that's enough from me. Soon we will be welcoming our guest of honor. But before that, it gives me great pleasure to be welcoming two folks from IMDA. In just a little bit, they're on their way? Okay. Oh yes, fantastic. So they're going to be coming up soon to set the stage and give us context about what to expect today. One moment, please. Oh, fantastic. Oh, our guest of honor is already here? Fantastic. This is a gentleman I always seem to keep bumping into all the time, one of the busiest men that we know. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our guest of honor today, the Minister for Communications and Information, Mr. S Iswaran. Welcome. As you can see, the minister has not yet arrived. Cue applause. I'm standing here smiling, going, okay. Don't worry, he's actually having a walk around the exhibit space, but he will be here soon, and then we will hear from IMDA in just a second. So thank you very much for your patience. In the meantime, I do have a few other things to share with you. The fact that we are broadcasting live on LinkedIn right now, and that I am live on Twitter right now. Yes, Mom, this is what I do for a living. But yes, it's all part of the fun and games. And listen, we're in for a good time today, and we hope that you will, whatever it is that really sticks with you today, that you do hashtag SG Digital and SGD Industry Day. One thing, I've mentioned this to a few of you who came in earlier, and I really want to emphasize this, because one, it's free, and it's fantastic, is that at 1:30 p.m. today, on level 3, we have discovery hours available. All right, so this is basically a nice way of saying breakout sessions, completely free. You get to get up close and personal with different types of the digital transformation journey, right? You'll be able to look at your company and see, where do I need to invest? Is it in upskilling? Is it in deep skills acquisition? Is it in tech capabilities? Or, and this is possible, do I have to completely reinvent my business? So if you are interested in this, please come and join us at 1:30 p.m. It's going to be on level 3. All the information will be there. So after this morning session, have a nice lunch. It's Thursday, lots of opportunities here, and then come back, please, at 3 p.m. for that. So I'm looking forward to today, because I was here yesterday. I didn't sleep overnight, but it feels like it. I was here yesterday, and a lot of great information was shared in this room, and I'm a big stats person, and one of them is that the World Economic Forum, I don't know if you read this recently, I think it was 10 days ago that it came out in the news, the World Economic Forum has actually voted Singapore the #1 world's most competitive economy, which is fantastic. I mean, completely outpacing the US, completely outpacing Europe, right? And on this stage yesterday, there was the co-founder of Hollyo, right? So they're in Hollage, and they completely transformed their family business into a digital sort of operating platform. And he was saying how proud he is that when he goes out to market, he says, Singapore is fast becoming a brand. It is brand Singapore now, right? We are becoming an innovation hub, which is exciting. But to be an innovation hub, you must invest in entrepreneurs, you must invest in people, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Apart from the tech, it's the people. The best asset on the planet, no matter what you're in, is the people. So I believe our guest of honor has arrived. Welcome, the Minister for Communications and Information, Mr. S Iswaran. Do you see, Minister, how happy we are to see you? Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you back, and we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say in a bit. In fact, Minister is also going to be engaging in a dialogue, and that's the first time we'll really see, at least for me, to really watch him in this particular moment, to be able to pick his brain. So just before that, there are 2 people I'd like to invite from IMDA, again, to set the context for today. So please join me in welcoming them, please. We have Mr. Howie Lau, the Chief Industry Development Officer at IMDA. We know him well. And Ms. Jane Lim, the Assistant Chief Executive of IMDA. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I think before we start, can we give a big round of applause to Nikki, because I like the way she was able to bridge while we were having that lag period. Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Howie. I'm from the Industry Development Group.
And I'm Jane. I'm from the Sectoral Transformation Group in IMDA.
And I'm sure you guys go concerts, right? So before every concert, before the main band comes on board, there'll be an indie band to warm up the crowd. So the duet is Jane and myself. But on a slightly more serious note, because this is our 3rd edition, and every year we look at the feedback in terms of areas of improvement. And one of the areas of improvement from the feedback was that, can you guys pack more into the event? So instead of 1 presenter, we now have 2 as well. So, but on a serious note, we do have a packed event.
Right. So very happy to say that for today, what we'll be covering is really about today, tomorrow, and together. So we'll start off with recapping what are some of the things that have been done over the last year or so, a lot of exciting things. And then we'll give a brief glimpse into the future with some of our very good speakers and panelists later on. And finally, in the afternoon, we're going to talk about together. There'll be some deep dives on what we can co-create together for the future of the ICT industry.
So let me just take you through a couple of quick slides in terms of some of the things that has happened. Because I think if you look back in the last 12 months, there's been a whole bunch of different things. I think within the industry, things have been moving fast. But at the same time, within the IMDA and the whole of government, we've launched a couple of new, quite a number of different initiatives, from the 5G innovation front to the industry digital plans, to talent programs, to data sharing frameworks, to e-invoicing. So it's been fast and furious for the last 12 months. But the slide's not fast enough. Slides. Technology is not good enough for a coordinated sync, but it's been a lot of things that's been happening in the last 12 months. And as Nikki mentioned earlier, I think we've also been on receiving a number of different ranking and scorecards and accolades on a global level. And as Singaporeans, we all like ranks and we like scorecards. While it is nice, I think the underlying message that is more important is that this is only possible because of the years of collaboration across all the different stakeholders within the industry as well as the government agencies. So I think for us, it is not just about the ranking, but more importantly, the joint effort that has been put together to get us to where we are today. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. And we look at the context of where we are, I think there's a couple of things that is worth noting. One is that growth continues to be tremendous, especially in Southeast Asia. The chart on the left, on your left, was a recent report by jointly done by Google, Temasek, and Bain. And there's basically two messages behind it. The size of the growth is huge in Southeast Asia. It's going from 100 billion to 300 billion. But more importantly, the speed of the growth is moving very rapidly as well. You have Indonesia and Vietnam growing at 40%. You have the rest of us growing at 20 to 30%. So the speed and the size of the growth is tremendous. But more importantly, the fabric of the growth is also changing. Earlier this year or late last year, we announced the Services 4.0 as part of the tech roadmap. And we recognize that because of the availability of deep tech, the way the company can then capture the growth is different. Because now you can be a lot more anticipatory, a lot more frictionless, a lot more end-to-end, a lot more empathic.
This is why we need 5G.
So with that, I think what we want to try and cover is that this growth and the next bound of growth can only be possible if three parts come together. We think the three parts are ensuring that we continue to transform our sector and help our sectors grow, because that is the demand side of the house. We need to continue to develop and grow the demand side as well as the supply side, because both are two sides of the same coin, and both have to be underpinned by a very strong talent layer. So we believe that the continued growth into the next bound has to be a combination of growth on the supply side, growth on the demand side, but a very strong growth on the talent side as well.
So let me just talk about what are some of the key achievements we've seen so far. And I think there's very strong momentum. First, about the SMEs Go Digital. So we know that SMEs are a critical part of our economy, 99% of our companies, 2/3 of our workforce. We're happy to say that, as of now, more than 15,000 SMEs have benefited from the SMEs Go Digital program. And that is up really substantially from just 4,000 at the beginning of this year. So you can see that the pace is really picking up, and more than half of that actually came from the Start Digital program, which we had launched with our partner, the banks and the telcos, earlier this year. Another one is about the Smart Estates program. So that is something we're doing with bring together the built environment sectors like property developers, as well as our tech companies, to co-create solutions, identify the problem statements. We put aside 14 million, and I think we've got some very innovative projects coming out of this, and we hope this will also help our companies to tap on the wider growth in Southeast Asia. A third one to just highlight is e-invoicing. As I think many of you know, we launched the nationwide e-invoicing network earlier this year, and we're already seeing 20,000 transactions every month, and that number keeps growing. Very much aided by the fact that we've got quite a number of our access point providers and solution providers, accounting software platforms on board as well. And one more thing to highlight is our Open Innovation Platform, and this is really shaping up to be the national platform for innovation. So it connects the problem statements from companies. Happy to say that we've got 67 challenges so far from a range of MNCs and SMEs, and with a very growing solver community, more than 4,500, and really glad to see things moving from POCs and prototype into pilots as well. So Howie, just a question. When was the last time you bought fish from a wet market?
I still go to the one at Ang Mo Kio 5 because the uncle there has the best salmon.
Oh, I see. Yes. Well, that's a good tip over there. But I think the issue is that not enough of us are going to the wet market, right? So this is a story, real life story, about one of our SMEs. So Mr. Jimmy Goh, who is a second generation founder, owner of a fish stall in the wet market, Bukit Batok by the way, Sin-Tree mini market. So obviously he found that he had declining business. So what did he do? So he worked with Firstcom, which is one of the SMEs Go Digital pre-approved solution providers. And with that, he's launched Thankfully Fresh, an e-commerce site. And now he's got customers from Punggol to Pasir Ris, and he's really seeing his business thrive as a result. So maybe next time can check out this one.
I'll try.
One other area looking at the different kinds of problem that we're tackling together between the public and private sectors is trade trust. So this was also announced by Minister Iswaran earlier this year, and it's really about the problem of cross-border trade. It is very paper-based today. I think those of you who might be in the shipping industry, if there's anyone out there, will know that actually sometimes the paper arrives, the ship arrives and the paper hasn't arrived yet, so you can't even release cargo. And so really trade trust is meant to address this issue. How do we move things into digital trade and create that circle of trust? So it's something that we're developing, interoperability framework, both legal and technical, writing on distributed ledger technology. And the aim is to try to connect different types or even platforms together. I'm very happy to say that earlier this week, actually, we had the International Chamber of Commerce with TradeLens, powered by Trade Trust. They've just launched this together with Trafigura and Perlin as well. So we're seeing very exciting news about this.
As we were preparing the set of slides, one of the things that dawned upon us and that got us very excited was that if you clock back 5 years, 10 years ago, the number of companies that were driving digital innovation, perhaps not that many. And perhaps you have the banks and the airlines, but as we looked at the progress, it was really heartening to see that there is a much stronger shift, not just SMBs, but large companies as well in terms of adopting digital technology. So that's positive. And with the demand side growing, it was obviously important that the supply side continues to grow as well. And there's a couple of initiatives. I think most of you have heard about the digital industry Singapore, and led by Kiran, who's at the front, and Edwin, who runs the accreditation and the Spark team. Because Singapore, we're kind of fortunate in that we have 80 out of the top 100 tech companies having some form of presence in Singapore. But it's important for us to continue working with them so that we're able to help them grow in Singapore, through Singapore, and with Singapore. One of the numbers that I particularly like is that there's more than $430 million worth of pipelines that we've helped to generate for them, because at the end of the day, every company needs to have a pipeline of revenues to continue the growth. So it was exciting to see this set of numbers, and we continue to want to build the momentum. I think the second part as well is that we recognize quite a number of our ICT companies are SMEs, and they typically look for two things. One is, how do I make sure that my solution continue to be more secure? How do I help transform my solution to be cloud native so I can be more scalable, more flexible, more adaptable? So we run programs like Go Secure and Go Cloud, and those two have been well received. Today we're announcing a new one called the Tech Capability Assessment Tool. Yesterday you might have heard that we also announced the Digital Acceleration Index. So the difference between the two, both are health checks. The digital acceleration is a broader health check, so it's a general annual screening. This one is a colonoscopy. It's more specific for cloud readiness. So we want to create programs for you to get to do an assessment of your readiness for some of the things to adopt. And
so Howie, was wondering, when you walked through the exhibition hall just now, did you just happen to see this robot carrying a giant cage out there?
Okay, this is done by Philip, Steve, and the team, because last year, you remember, we launched the Digital Services Lab. The intent was a collaborative effort between IMDA Research Institute as well as industry to create a solution that cuts across broad base. So we have solutions like the autonomous bots, we have solutions like the National Speech Corpus. The National Speech Corpus is just a very sexy way of saying digital Singlish that is now used by MediaCorp as well. So these are companies that have worked with us to create broad-based solutions on the leading edge that could be used across multiple industries.
And I think really what is really at the heart of it all is our people. And this is something that we're continuing to work with all of you here. How do we build a strong Singapore core for the tech industry here? And we're very pleased to say that actually of the 189,000 professionals in our tech workforce, more than 81,000 have already taken up some form of training through the Tech Skills Accelerator program. And I think we'll continue to see great momentum from here. Wouldn't have been possible if not for the partnership we have with SSG, WSG, employers, institutes of higher learning, and in fact, many of our workforce as well. There are two kinds of programs. There are programs that help people convert from non-tech to tech, and as well as though it's in tech itself, to go into deep tech. And I think this is really what we need to do to keep the momentum up and grow our workforce.
Yeah, in fact, Jane, I think besides the numbers, what's really heartening is that as we peel behind the numbers, every number represents a success story of an individual, of companies that has taken on the challenge of continual learning. In fact, today we have both Chikin as well as Nora with us in the audience. So if you get a chance to speak with them, to hear their success stories as well, because it is not just about numbers, it is about our workforce taking the initiative together with the companies to continually upgrade in order to be able to harness the growth that is available.
And it's also, folks coming out from who are on non-tech backgrounds, taking out tech jobs as well. So this will give a shout out to Wilson from Singtel. And I think his story is about both the company going and undergoing its own transformation, as well as for himself, the workforce going through transformation. So Wilson was actually an operations executive, no IT or coding background. And when I think Singtel opened up RPA courses for their workforce to try, he was really enthusiastic about it, and he trained himself, and he built a first bot. One of his first bots was actually used to handle subscriptions to the FIFA World Cup. So you're going to handle, agitated customers who want their subscription the next day, or right there. And it successfully handled 70% of all subscriptions, and Wilson himself is now an RPA developer in Singtel. I think that's a great story about, Services 4.0, the transformation both at the company as well as the individual level.
We started one of the first charts saying that we kind of got here because of the collaborative effort across industries, different stakeholders, and different government agencies. And clearly, as we design the next bound to leverage on the growth and to create new innovations, clearly the answer is continuing to find that magic formula of working together. And that's where, as Jane mentioned, today's design is about, today's forum is about today, tomorrow, as well as the workshops that we have later to co-create together. And today we're also very excited to announce three initiatives of examples of collaboration. One is between the Singapore Computer Society and IMDA in the steering committee for AI ethics and governance. And this team is co-chaired by Yoksin as well as Zikin. So this will be a committee that's jointly run in order to help promote and drive AI ethics and governance. The second one is between SGTech and IMDA in further promoting data protection as well as data innovation, again also with Chikin. So very excited to be working both with SCS as well as SGTech. And the third one is with Two-Star. Two-Star will be coming up to present later. They were formerly known as the Tsinghua Pioneer Park. They are one of the largest key incubators in China, representing about 10,000 companies. And we're doing an exchange with them so that their ecosystem of startups and our ecosystems of startups can then commingle, not just in terms of market access, talent, and hopefully many new innovations as well. So we believe that moving forward, it is still about co-creation. It is still about trying to do stuff together. And we believe that given the community that we have and the track record we have, the possibilities within this village is going to be tremendous. And as we kind of prepared the last part of the chart, we were trying to say, how can we find a picture that best encapsulates what we're trying to do here in Singapore? And we think we found a chart.
And so we picked this because, it's really one of the key landmarks, new landmarks in Singapore itself, and I think it's going to be something that's much loved. But really, what we're saying is that it's really about how we bring different concepts together. I mean, I think Jewel is truly unique because it blends retail, it blends the indoor garden, and it blends an airport together. So in a way, I think the Singapore is also like that. And it's really about how do we all work together, how do we blend these different ideas together, and that's how we create something truly unique and world-class and make this one of the best tech industries and ecosystems in the world.
So look forward to connecting more dots with you guys. Feel free to reach out to both Jane and myself because she's the demand side, I'm the supply side, and hopefully between all of us, we can create the next Jewel together. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lau, Ms. Lim, thank you for that duet. As we can see, you've been very busy. This is why IMDA never sleeps. I call them the honorary Avengers of Singapore. So thank you. It's wonderful to see all the investments that are taking place, you know, that the government really is invested in this country and in its growth from all sides of the coin, which is very exciting. We saw that number there, I love numbers, 10,000 new tech jobs in the next 3 years. I mean, Singapore is one of those countries, right, that for 54 years has had to think outside of the box. A country with very little resources, it's always been people, 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 and that's what we're hearing, that's what's driving the economy, really focusing on entrepreneurs and SMEs. That's how we become the innovation hub that we want to be, and certainly very soon, the world's first smart nation. So with that, I'm very, very excited to be welcoming our guest of honor to the stage to hear his insight and his take on this topic. Please welcome the Minister for Communications and Information, Mr. S Iswaran.
As you can tell, the civil service offers you a very exciting and diverse career. And I want to thank Howie and Jane for the show that they put on. Thank you very much. But I think what they've covered gives you a very good insight into the the broad range of activities that we're undertaking in order to fuel the growth of the ICM industry in Singapore and to ensure that it continues to thrive in new context of a digital economy. So I want to start by acknowledging all our industry partners and my colleagues from IMDA and other government agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to all of you, and I want to welcome you to this SG Digital Day. And I'm glad that so many of you have been able to join us this morning at this annual event, because it gives us an opportunity to reflect or take stock of what has happened in the industry and the broad trends that continue to impinge on the industry's trajectory, and at the same time also to think ahead into some of the possibilities of the future that we can work together on. So digital connectivity, as we all know, has enabled new forms of communication. It has made new types of partnerships possible, and it has enabled access to markets that hitherto may have been more challenging for us to enter. Boosted by this digitalization wave, our ICM industry in Singapore has grown at an annualized nominal growth rate of 8.3% between 2016 to 2018. The ICM industry's workforce has also grown to more than 200,000. And in fact, this is one of the sectors in our economy that continues to generate interesting career opportunities for Singaporeans and others. And while the current global environment may pose some headwinds in the short term, we need to keep our eyes firmly focused on the long-term trajectory of this industry and the opportunities that it has to offer. From our perspective, we believe that Singapore is well positioned to be a contributor to and to be a beneficiary of this trend in digitalization and the evolution of the digital economy. We are in the heart of Southeast Asia. It's a region that is growing fast, and by some estimates, as you've also seen in the presentation, the digital economy itself is expected to grow to about $300 billion by 2025. And I think these numbers are based on some of the trends that we see today, but the reality is there can be significant increases in those numbers if adoption rates are kicked up by new technologies. Many companies have chosen to locate themselves here in Singapore in order to access the region, and we have become an established gateway for startup investment funding. Recently, also, the International Institute for Management Development recognized Singapore as one of the most digitally competitive countries in Asia. It's a nice accolade to have, but I think more importantly, we have to ensure that we remain focused on strengthening our ICM industry, which is actually a key determinant of our competitiveness. Our ICM industry is an enabler of Singapore's digital transformation. Our ICM companies have been the first movers in leveraging digital technologies to overcome resource limitations and access new markets and build new types of businesses. But the ICM industry is also a horizontal that catalyzes the digital transformation of other industries, spurring the adoption of technologies such as cloud computing and AI, and allowing new ventures to thrive. Our progress to date in this effort has been the result of a very productive collaboration between the industry, our labor movement, and the government. And we have to deepen this partnership so that Singapore can succeed in the next phase of our digital evolution. We must focus our efforts in particular on 3 areas. The first is in securing Singapore's competitive advantage in a 5G future. The second, in harnessing the overseas linkages that we have built with international partners. And the third, in developing an agile workforce for competitive enterprises. I will expand on the first point in particular about 5G in the course of the next few minutes, and we can take the rest up in the dialogue and Q&A session thereafter. Singapore's 5G ecosystem will be the backbone of our digital economy. So we will strengthen Singapore's value proposition as a place to do business by supporting innovative 5G applications and services, undergirded by a secure and resilient 5G infrastructure, which promises lower latencies, higher peak data rates, and supports greater device density. All of you, as operators, technology providers, users, and vendors, are essential stakeholders in this journey, and you can help in the co-creation of this ecosystem. One aspect of the government's work with respect to 5G has been to foster collaborations on the demand side for this novel technology. Ultimately, it's the specific use cases for 5G that will create the value. And that's why IMDA launched the $40 million fund to support 5G R&D and tech trials, because we want to ensure the demand side is well curated, even as we focus on supply side initiatives. And the industry has shown keen interest and put forward interesting proposals. Today, I'm pleased to share with you some of the new 5G trials in consumer applications, smart estates, and urban mobility. First, cloud gaming. The innovative possibilities of cloud gaming have been speculated upon for quite some time, but they remain constrained by current network bandwidth and latency. So I'm very pleased to share with you that Razer and Singtel will trial 5G-enabled cloud gaming with the aim of positioning Singapore as a leader in this space. Supported by IMDA, this trial will test high bandwidth and low latency networks that will allow consumers to play high quality and performance demanding games on any device. I'm told that this is something that is highly sought after, not that I'm an active gamer myself. Secondly, smart estates and smart mobility. As part of Singapore's efforts to realize our smart nation vision, we seek to leverage technologies to manage our estates and enrich the lives of our people and the communities they inhabit. 5G has the potential to enhance the delivery and scale up the deployment of existing estate management solutions. IMDA is thus partnering Capital Land, TPG Telecom, and NavInfo Data Tech to test 5G and CV2X, cellular vehicle to everything technologies, starting with intelligent mobility solutions for last mile passenger transport within Science Parks 1 and 2. Capital Land will open up the site subsequently for its tenants to test 5G solutions that support business innovation. The third is urban mobility. We are also seeing momentum in 5G research in urban mobility. Nanyang Technological University and M1 will be launching the NTU connected smart mobility testbed to develop new 5G vehicle communication solutions. Students, staff, and faculty will be part of the trials as CV2X equipment is installed in shuttle buses and autonomous vehicles. Industry partners will also be invited to explore the integration of CV2X technologies with autonomous vehicles, traffic infrastructure, and unmanned aircraft systems. Turning to the supply side, to enable industry to develop and trial fit-for-purpose 5G solutions, we must ensure our 5G infrastructure and networks are based on a sound policy design and holistic regulatory framework. And I want to, at this point, thank the many who responded to IMDA's recent public consultation on this matter, which has helped to inform our regulators' thinking on a variety of issues in this regard. After careful consideration of the feedback received and taking into account the international developments in the space, IMDA has decided that Singapore should have 2 5G nationwide networks as a start. This will enable optimal network deployments and sustainable competition and allow Singapore to realize the full potential of 5G. In addition to these 2 nationwide 5G networks, IMDA has further assessed that the market can accommodate 2 additional localized 5G networks. This will allow all 4 existing mobile network operators to participate in the provision of 5G services, albeit in different ways. With the participation of more mobile network operators, IMDA expects the greater competition to benefit consumers and businesses and bring about greater choice, competitive prices, and service innovation. IMDA will allocate the 5G spectrum via a call for proposal. This is a deliberate policy choice and also a pragmatic approach. In deciding to award the spectrum through a CFP process, our focus is on identifying which operators can deliver the best overall value to the Singapore economy through the rollout of 5G infrastructure and services, and not just on the highest bidder. Therefore, IMDA will invite all 4 existing mobile network operators to submit detailed proposals covering aspects such as network security design, network performance, as well as spectrum offer price. IMDA will issue the call for proposal today. And with the launch of the CFP, we will attain another milestone in our 5G network deployment and the digital transformation of our economy. I'm pleased to share that we are on track to commence the rollout of 5G networks by 2020, and we can expect 2 full-fledged 5G standalone networks covering at least half of Singapore by the end of 2022. Our vision is for Singapore to be at the forefront of innovation and value creation, enabled by secure and resilient 5G applications and services. We seek to do this by building a world-class 5G infrastructure, allocating spectrum on the basis of the overall value to the economy, and co-investing with industry to advance innovative 5G solutions and use cases. So I want to urge all our industry partners and other stakeholders to work closely with IMDA in this important national effort and to help us realize this vision for 5G and Singapore's digital economy. Singapore must continue to differentiate our economy and secure our competitive advantage in the digital era. Be it the building of digital infrastructure, forging of international partnerships, spurring broad-based enterprise digitalization, or developing the tech capabilities of our workforce. All of these are a joint endeavor for the government and our partners in industry and the labor movement. So we look forward to working closely with all of you to secure Singapore's future in the digital era. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. We appreciate that. Some great examples there of how Singapore is really investing in the digital economy to secure the competitive advantage. If I could ask you, Minister, to kindly take a seat. I believe Minister is about to engage in a chat that I'm really looking forward to talk about what is next for the ICM industry, including investing in people and also investing in business. And like Minister said, collaboration is key. So these international partnerships. The gentleman to facilitate this dialogue here to my left, wonderful friendly face. He is, of course, the CEO and the co-founder of Blue Hat Ventures, Mr. Robert Gilby. Gentlemen, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Nikki. Minister, thank you for agreeing to have a discussion where we dig a little deeper into some of the topics in your speech and some of the themes of today. Now, you shared a very positive outlook for the future digital economy and the role that 5G plays as a backbone for some of that. How important is 5G as a competitive advantage for Singapore, and what are some of the benefits for Singaporean-based companies and individuals resulting from successful 5G?
So I think 5G is something that's been talked about extensively, and clearly the attributes, whether in terms of low latency data, higher peak data rates, and also in terms of its ability to support, I think it's about 1 million devices per square kilometer. All of these are some of the theoretical possibilities of the technology. And what we need to do is really find ways to translate that technological potential into economic value. And that's why, if you look at the entire positioning of Singapore and how we've gone about it, our focus has been on a few key areas, and I think I should elaborate on the points I made. The first is obviously the infrastructure. We want to ensure that we have world-class 5G infrastructure, and we're going about it in a manner that is both pragmatic and focused on the overall value that it can create for our economy. Because if you run a pure auction process for the spectrum, for example, you might be able to secure a high price, but whether there are then resources left over for the application and the value-added services to be developed and deployed, that is an entirely different matter. Right. So our focus is on combining both. Obviously, we have a responsibility to ensure there is an appropriate price, but to actually look at the larger value proposition of 5G for Singapore. I think where Singapore can position itself, I think, competitively here is in the innovative usage. In other words, innovate to create new possibilities. And this is relevant for all of us here in this room and beyond involved in the industry. Because whilst 5G has these possibilities, we need to demonstrate how it can lead to commercializable activities and value propositions. So this is where the work that we are doing in demand-side curation, which IMDA is doing, working with the network operators, but also with industry end users, because that's critical, and looking at different domains. So today I talked a little bit about gaming, cloud gaming, and we talked a little bit about smart mobility and smart estates. But we've also had some work going on in the area of the ports, and in terms of advanced manufacturing and IoT solutions. Right. I think all of these have the potential to specifically answer your point, demonstrate Singapore's ability to be a leading innovator in this space, right. And secondly, create tangible value propositions in the application of this technology across a wide range of verticals.
So it's clear that the Singapore government would like to position Singapore at the forefront of innovation, and you've been investing significantly into the digital economy. So for the companies in the ICM sector, the Infocom Media sector, what does that mean for them? And particularly in the current uncertain global economic environment, how can they continue to thrive in benefiting from your investments in the digital economy?
So I think our response to uncertainty in the external environment is really to double down on some of the key initiatives that have long-term value for us. One of those initiatives is in the digitalization of our economy, because this is what some would call a no regrets, robust across all scenario strategy. Because whether you have a prolonged, slow economic growth or a kick up in the growth prospects, this investment in our digital capabilities is going to hold us in good stead. So we need to focus on that as our primary objective. And our ICM industry, all of you here, have a key role to play in a few ways. The first is because the ICM sector as a vertical is an early adopter and has the ability, therefore, to blaze the trail, demonstrate how this technology can be used, not all the existing technologies, but also those that are now being talked about extensively in terms of cloud computing, AI, etc. How it can be used to derive benefit. The second role, and perhaps even more critical role, is your position as a catalyst, as a change agent for all other verticals in the economy. Because the ICM sector is both a solution provider, a demonstrator of what is possible, and a change agent to make those changes happen. So we need the industry to work closely with us in this transition of our economy into a digital footprint. The third point I would make is, as we go more into digitalization, the need for cybersecurity solutions is key. Because as some of my cybersecurity colleagues put it, the attack surface increases significantly as we increase our digitalization efforts. That doesn't mean we are deterred from our digitalization effort, but what it does mean is we need to invest equally in the cybersecurity realm. And that is why, again, I think in the ICM sector, this is a key aspect where we can participate. So my assessment is that for the Infocom media industry of Singapore, the potential in this transition is enormous, not just because of what you can do for yourselves, but also what you can do for other sectors and thereby create a stronger economy overall in Singapore.
So, related to developing that economy, we heard from Howie and Jane earlier that people are at the heart of that kind of capability, and there seems to be a national effort to create an environment for individuals to boost their digital capabilities and skills to be ready for that digital economy. What are some of the examples or some of the details that you've seen that we're doing that's kind of helping boost that capability?
Talent is, I think, the key ingredient in this entire enterprise, because everybody we talk to, and it's not unique to Singapore, in the US, in China, everywhere, they talk about the need for talent and the shortage of the relevant talent and with the skill sets that are needed. So we need to invest in developing the talent. Now, we do quite a lot in the upstream in our universities and so on. And it's quite remarkable because in a few short years, the enrollment, for example, in NUS's computer science faculty has more than trebled. And it has more than trebled whilst its intake cutoff, the points required, remains, in fact, is now the second highest in the university, if I remember correctly. So it's remarkable because what it means is we will be able to attract, both in quantitative and quality terms, more people into the industry, at least in the university level. Meanwhile, we are investing in the capability development in the industry itself. So you've heard about the Tech Skills Accelerator program and what we are doing, IMDA is doing in this regard. I wanted to highlight one point in particular about it. One of the key areas which has, in my opinion, been very effective and should be grown even further is what we call the company-led training initiative. I'm told that to date we have about 50-odd companies and about 4,000 or 5,000 workers who have been trained through these company-led initiatives. And the value of this is that it's good for government and our agencies to provide the resources and the courses and so on that are available for our people in the ICM sector, for example, to upgrade their skills. But this needs to be validated by the industry itself. And the strongest validation is when a company itself says, let me take the lead in the training because I have this need in my economy, in my company. And in the process, they upgrade not just people whom they are employing or seek to employ, but in many cases, they're also training surplus to needs, which is very valuable because it means that there's a validated program and the people who emerge from it are able to then participate in the broader economy. So I want to encourage this because the capacity building and the training initiatives in this regard is key, but this only works when we have our industry partners stepping up. And I'd like to see many more of those happening.
And so, as you mentioned, both the skills and the focus for the future digital economy is very much a global initiative and a global focus. But we hear a lot of talk about Singapore's role as a hub or a gateway to Southeast Asia and beyond in the region. For the businesses out there, how can they best position themselves to leverage Singapore's unique international partnerships or some of the overseas links that we have both here in the region and globally?
So in the last few months, I've been in the US, I've been in Europe, I've been in China, in India, literally in the last 2 months or so. But I think one key point that emerges in the discussion with enterprises and so on is that they see Southeast Asia as a market that is very promising. It is no longer a sort of conceptual grasp. It is an actual understanding and an effort to appreciate the nuances of our market and the transitions that are taking place. That is a very welcome development because what it means is that major players and investors from around the world are taking our region seriously and looking to invest in the region. The second key takeaway is they see Singapore as the best point from which to launch into the region. For a variety of reasons, our corporate culture is compatible with what they're familiar with. They see many of the capabilities that we have will support their regional, if not international, ambitions. And another important point is talent. And I wanted to just underscore this because they see Singapore as a place where they can find talent in Singapore, but they also recognize that our talent policy allows for judicious complement from outside Singapore. And we have worked on this systematically so that even as we develop our local talent, we are able to bring in people from overseas who complement our domestic capabilities. And I think the third point is really in the way our industries have been moving into the regional economy. One of the major thrusts in our economic effort is, apart from the innovation and digitalization piece, is the internationalization of Singapore's economy. And this is in particular relevant for our small and medium-sized enterprises. So our IMDA, our Enterprise Singapore and Economic Development Board and so on have all been working to see how we can help our companies venture into the regional markets. And we have solutions that people are very interested in. We have also got developments in Singapore that they seek to learn from and emulate. So that means our companies have a good calling card with which to go into the regional market. Let me just give you an example of what we are doing. We've just launched this smart city initiative between Singapore and China, with a particular focus on Singapore with Shenzhen. And this, we think, is going to yield some significant outcomes, because we're looking at specific areas like how can we allow for mutual recognition of the digital ID of enterprises? How can we facilitate greater cross-border data flow, trade connectivity, and how can digitalization enhance it and make it less cumbersome? All of these and many others is not just about Singapore and Shenzhen, because from our perspective in China, Shenzhen is part of the greater Bay Area. And so it's an opportunity for us to plug into that larger ecosystem. And at the same time, from the Chinese perspective, it's also about ASEAN and the Smart Cities initiative within ASEAN. So we have actually a platform from which to venture into our immediate region in Southeast Asia, and also explore opportunities in, say, for example, in the Greater Bay Area and the larger Chinese market. I just came back from Bangalore last week, or Bengaluru as they say now, and we've just launched a Global Innovation Alliance node in Bangalore, so that our companies can now plug into the Indian ecosystem in terms of enterprise startups and innovation. So we are well connected. There's a great platform from which our companies can launch into these markets. And I think we have a strong brand positioning, which also strengthens the value proposition our companies can offer regional markets and partners.
Well, Minister, we could probably talk on this topic for another few hours, because it's a very large and complex topic, but unfortunately we're running out of time. But I just wanted to thank you for your very positive outlook on the future digital economy and the potential, and for joining us for a deeper discussion on some of these topics. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Much obliged. Minister, thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you.
Mr. Gilby as well, thank you very much for leading us through that conversation. A lot of systems and developments in place. Minister, thank you for joining us this morning. Really appreciate that. Mr. S Iswaran will take his leave, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Mr. Gilby as well. Cheers. Fantastic. So that is a great start so far. We're seeing what the systems are, what's in place, what the plans are, and where the support is coming from. Next, we're going to take a little bit of a different trajectory with these short presentations. Again, these are key leaders across various industries who have a pretty good understanding of the digital economy and have to navigate through that. So hopefully what we'll be hearing over the next few presentations, and again, they're relatively short, succinct, to the point. We'll be able to get the tips. We'll be able to understand what works, what doesn't, and where the pain points are. So we're very excited. We are going to begin with the first presentation, Technology Opportunities, Trends and Implications. This is going to be done by the founder and the managing partner of Qualgrow, Mr. Hyang Cho. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank IMDA for giving me the immense privilege to talk to you. It's a real honor. As we all know, technology has really provided fabulous opportunities to not only the startups, not only the venture capitalists like ourselves, but also to all of you, the corporate world. My small hope in the next 5 minutes is just to share with you my real enthusiasm and big belief in the opportunities deriving from technology innovations. I would like you to not think about the startup world as that world out there, and there's the corporate world somewhere elsewhere. It's just one world. That world is the world of technology, and that world is in this room. It's the world of opportunities. try to take inspiration and leverage what IMDA has been supported the startup world as innovate universities like NUS and of course the government. We have done an incredible number of progresses that would also help the corporates, be it large enterprise or SMEs. Indeed, the ecosystem has never been as strong as today, and it keeps accelerating. There's a lot of money coming into the startup world and making innovations move faster. There's also a lot of technologies that we, the tech world in Singapore and Southeast Asia, has been trying to import from the rest of the world. We are very open-minded and we try to leverage the best of the world, but we also try to make Singapore and Southeast Asia produce disruptive technologies. And last, I would like just to share a few thoughts modestly on what the corporate world could think about in order to also benefit from the technology advancements. As the Google and Temasek main report has shown in the past few days, and there has been an amazing increase in technology funding. I have had the privilege to live around the world, US, Europe, Japan, looked at China, India. I can tell you that there has not been such a fabulous momentum in terms of support to the tech world as it has been the case in Southeast Asia, in particular Singapore. It has increased by about 15 times, from 1 billion to almost 15 billion this year. This money has been going mainly to the unicorns, but what I would like you to also think about is what you can see at the bottom of this chart. Smaller tech companies have also benefited a lot from the money coming into this space. For Series A companies, for example, typically companies that have 2 or 3 years of operations, the average amount of money that they can get now in raising with investors like ourselves has gone from 2 million roughly to 4 million. That's a lot of money to create technology platforms, to invest into talent, to grow their companies. In terms of sectors, basically we are talking about all sorts of opportunities in various areas, from AI, artificial intelligence, to big data analytics, to Internet of Things. All of you have already used those technologies. I just would like to highlight a few areas of opportunities. Artificial intelligence is something that I hope most of the SMEs and of course large corporates will not be afraid of. Artificial intelligence today should be seen as Excel spreadsheet improved, except that the data will be processed by itself. There will be new formulas that will be produced by the system itself. You should really, in the coming years, use, even if you are a mid-sized enterprise, some sort of artificial intelligence and machine learning as you have been using Excel spreadsheet. Please do so. It will benefit tremendously your companies for processing data to better segment your consumers, for enhancing the effectiveness of your internal processes. Internet of Things, IoT, is something that also could benefit the manufacturing sector to capture information along your production process and logistics process to really ensure that you are effective in terms of managing waste, for example, or in terms of producing more faster delivery to your consumers. Clearly, big data and analytics is also an area where there has been a lot of progress. I know that SMEs have been using that a lot. Some of our startups have been supporting SMEs to also enhance their ability to analyze and process data. I would also like to really get your support to the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs are doing incredibly hard work. Some of these companies, just to cite 3 of them, Ninjavan, Showbag, and Founding Societies, have come out of nowhere. They were not in the map just 4 or 5 years ago, and today they are doing incredible things. Ninjavan delivering 50,000 parcels a day across Southeast Asia, Showbag serving 2 million customers across 7 countries, facilitating 4 million transactions per month. This is just amazing. And in terms of supporting SMEs, Funding Societies has been providing a few hundred thousands of loans that banks are not always able to provide for various reasons. Support them, but also take inspiration from them. They are all incredible entrepreneurs. There are also similar profiles in your own organization that you would want to spot and turn them into intra-entrepreneurs. My parting thoughts would be for corporates and SMEs to think about a number of questions that you should ask yourself in creating much more momentum in technology development and capturing opportunities in your own company. First, to think about what areas of new competitive advantage you could grow for your company based on technology. Second, who will be the talent taking care of that? Where are they today? How can you motivate and incentivize them? What are the digital tools? There are hundreds of them. They are simple and they are cheap today that you can use, and how you can better leverage data, taking advantage, for example, of the 5G that the minister has talked about. And last, continue to improve and improve and improve. This has been a privilege for me to talk to you. I really hope that it has given you some sense of the belief that we have in the opportunities in the technology world. Thank you so much. Thank you, IMDA, for giving me this privilege.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chor. Really great insight from you, and amazing, such significant investment in the region and tech, and specifically here in Singapore, some great numbers over there. And I like what you said about AI. In fact, just recently, Singapore, again, named #1 in terms of, out of 105 cities, the city that is most ripe and ready for AI disruption. So I think you're absolutely on the money there, Mr. Chor. Next, we're going to be hearing from a gentleman who is from Boston Consulting Group in Munich. He's the managing director and senior partner there, and yesterday he gave a riveting presentation about what it takes to be a digital champion. I think slightly different today, so please do welcome Dr. Michael Grebe.
So good morning. Many of you may be interested to get to know what is the digital maturity of my company today and how can I actually accelerate the digital transformation. BCG's Digital Acceleration Index is the tool to help to answer these very important questions. But first, what does digital really mean? So digital comprises, in our definition, of 6 dimensions. First, business strategy driven by digital, and the key question for you is, have you identified your digital strategy and written it down? Second, digitizing the core along the value chain, and the key question is, have you identified the key opportunities that your company has along the value chain by leveraging digital technologies and developing digital capabilities? Then exploring digital growth. So what are the things that can actually boost your digital growth? What are investment opportunities? And then last but not least, building new capabilities. This is usually the hardest part, and we have heard today a lot about the importance of basically upskilling people and training the workforce. So do you know where to close the most important capability gaps? Behind the 6 building blocks, we have 36 dimensions. Examples are Agile at Scale, we have talked about it, Manufacturing 4.0, or, for example, the world-class tech function to transform the technology function from an enterprise IT function, complex, working in a silo, towards a truly integrated digital enabling technology function. For each dimension, we have defined at BCG 4 answering categories, 4 maturity levels, and this then results in the so-called DAI score between 0 and 100. And this is then the starting point when you do this analysis to see where you are, and then talk about how can you accelerate your digital growth. So now let's talk about so-called digital champions and what they do to boost their digital performance. Digital champions have a score of more than 67 in the Digital Acceleration Index. So what do digital champions do? Number 1, they invest in digital talents and upskill. They have more than 10% of their workforce already working in digital roles, and they plan to enhance this dramatically, much more than the digital laggards. Number 2, they significantly invest into digital, more than 5% of their OPEX, and of course this differs by industry. in, for example, the telco industry or also in technology industries, this is higher, but on average it's about 5%. That's the threshold that we have statistically identified over the last 3 years that we do the DEI globally. And it's based on about 5,000 companies that we have evaluated around the globe. Number 3, they build enabling capabilities. They build new capabilities. For example, they build up a new data and digital platform and are capable to scale that up. And this is then the 4th point. Whereas the digital laggards only run pilots, the leaders and champions can actually scale up the pilots and connect them to the core of the business. This is a very important capability, and this is where most of the laggards really struggle. And last but not least, they focus on new digital growth. I mean, there are fantastic examples, like Amazon, for example, creating AWS, now generating a double-digit billion-dollar figure every year for them. This is a good example for growth in adjacent businesses. So, does it now pay off to be a digital champion? The answer is yes. We have identified various proofs of evidence for this. So the first one is we ask every year the digital champions and all other companies, did you outperform your peers in the last 12 months? And more than 60% of the digital champions said, yes, we outperformed our peers and we performed better in terms of time to market and also cost efficiency. We have done various sector studies over the last years. One in insurance, for example. We have basically looked into more than 80 insurance companies around the globe. And we have identified that the champions, the digital champions in insurance, outperformed their peers significantly in terms of customer satisfaction, and they could also more significantly reduce the expense ratio by 4 percentage points. And the last example is from the telco industry, where you can see that looking at the market share development since 2012 to 2017, the digital champions could actually increase their market share by 7 percentage points, whereas the laggards lost 11 percentage points. So it's quite important to be at least a mid-tier player, but not a laggard. One phenomenon that we observe is that the gap between the leaders and the laggards is widening. So we see major gaps, for example, on the capability side, but also on the technology side. And if we compare the plans of the digital champions versus the plans of the laggards will not be capable to catch up unless they really, really increase the effort to close the gap. And the biggest problems are siloed organizations, a big old legacy landscape that cannot connect it with the rest, and also the missing capabilities on the data analytics side. So data governance has scored the lowest across all DEI dimensions so far, and establishing an agreed upon data governance between business and technology is a very, very important prerequisite. So we kindly invite you to measure your digital maturity in order to find levers to accelerate your digital transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grebe. A lot of insight there into what it takes to be a digital champion. Looking forward to that, and hopefully you'll have a chance to speak with Michael later on. Perhaps, I think, will you be running a session later on, Dr. Grebe, upstairs? Or perhaps they'll have a chance to speak with you outside in the exhibit hall, because to really measure your digital maturity is key to figure out what are your next steps. And obviously, as we've just heard, it really does pay off to invest. It can be a very expensive endeavor, but those returns mean ultimately savings. And of course, staying relevant out there and beating your peers, which is always good and healthy at the end of the day. Next to take center stage, I'm very pleased to be welcoming the Executive Deputy General of 2-Star to come and speak with us about the IMDA 2-Star Exchange. This presentation is called Driving Global Innovation. Please welcome Mr. Wang Yongrui. Pleasure.
Dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a great honor to me to participate in this big event and share our concept as well as the collaboration between IMDA and 2-Star. Firstly, let me briefly introduce 2-Star. 2-Star is a subsidiary of TUS Holdings. TAS Holdings was set up on July 2000 and is the former Tsinghua University Science Park Development Center founded in August 1994. TAS Holdings is a science and technology investment holding group established in reliance on Tsinghua University, focusing on science and technology services. It's a controlling shareholder or shareholder of over 800 listed or non-listed companies, and the total assets under its management have exceeded 200 billion RMB. TAS Holdings actively responds to the strategy of innovation-driven development in implementation of Tsinghua University's role of serving the society. TAS Holdings develop a synergistic clustering innovation business structure featuring science parks, science and technology industry, science and technology finance, 3-in-1 model. TAS Holdings' science and technology industry segment focuses on 5 strategy emerging industries. They are environmental protection, new energy, big health, digital economy, and new materials. By incubation plus investment plus M&A plus alliance strategy, TAS Holdings has quickly formed a full industrial chain layout in various industries, effectively strengthened and improved the company's science and technology innovation ecosystem. TASSTAR was started in 1999 and is the earliest and largest national incubator, and currently has formed a well-known incubator system brand with Global Innovation Express as the core. TASSTAR has incubated more than 5,000 companies totally during the past 20 years, of which more than 2,000 enterprises have been graduated. 35 enterprises have been successfully listed, and more than 40 enterprises were merged and acquired, and the cumulative return on equity investment reached nearly 20 billion RMB. TASSTAR is the first organization which has established the incubation plus investment development model and the professional incubator development direction in China. TASSTAR has established more than 140 incubation bases in more than 70 cities in China and 30 incubation bases in more than 13 countries abroad. The incubation area of TASSTAR is nearly 200,000 square meters, accounting for about 5% of the total area in China. TASSTAR is also an incubator with the most complete offline coverage network. With the networking of 170 incubation spaces around the world, just like Chinese high-speed express, we call it Global Innovation Express. We are providing multiple and efficient connectivity channels in various aspects for our incubated enterprises, such as talents, resources, capital, and industries, to eliminate the difficulties encountered by startups in initial stage to facilitate the flow of innovation and venture resources. Today we are here in Singapore, thanks to strong support from IMDA. We are honored to meet many leading enterprises and talents from Singapore during the past years. We really believe that Singapore will be a potential hub of global innovation and match the network of TASSTAR. As we discussed, Singapore's vision is to be the regional digital hub of Southeast Asia and attract promising deep tech Chinese companies and talent to increase vibrancy and diversity of the local tech ecosystem. China is the leading global hub for many deep tech development, and TASSTAR is the leading incubator and key innovation player in China. We are collaborating with IMDA in this IMDA TASSTAR exchange program to support companies landing in both countries through increasing cooperation and resources exchange between our two programs, provide services in innovation and entrepreneurship so as to jointly build a successful innovation ecosystem and support the development of Singapore and China technology ecosystem. TASTA will provide the platform to support Singapore companies to land and expand in China. We believe that our efforts will surely bring forth good fruit to drive global innovation. It can become a poster child for global innovation in future. Last but not least, thank you all and wish today's event a very good success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wan. You're absolutely right. I think this exchange is a very, very good opportunity to become a poster child. Amazing that we'll be able to leverage these communities both in China to land there and of course expand there and also here in Singapore. So congratulations on that. We are going to keep a close eye. You of course have been very busy at 2-Star, incubating all around the world. What a global footprint. So as you can see, we are getting ready on this side of the stage. It is time now for the panel sessions. We have 2 panels before we end this morning. So a lot of food for thought coming up. And in this particular panel, and again, hopefully you are hashtagging because there's a lot of information we're getting here today. Some of that hopefully is very relevant to you and your journey with your business, whatever industry that you are in. Our hashtags, of course, SG Digital and SGD Industry Day. But back to this panel. So we've got a lot of heavy hitters in the room today, to be honest. So this is a really good opportunity for a moderator to jump right in. What they're going to be talking about is obviously technology and services 4.0. Right? How do we leverage that? Especially, we know the rise in demand from services and also customer experiences. Is it meeting that? How do we leverage that? What are businesses, or what do we expect, I should say, from the ICM industry when it comes to businesses? What are we looking for? So it gives me great pleasure to be introducing the heavy hitters, including our moderator. We have Ms. Jane Lim, the Assistant Chief Executive of IMDA, who we saw earlier with her duet with Mr. Lau. She will be moderating this discussion. We also have Mr. Dennis Tan, the Executive Vice President and the Head of Consumer Financial Services at OCBC. We're very grateful to have him. Mr. Joshua Koh, the CEO of Commune Lifestyle. Welcome. We have Mr. Ang Kiam Meng, the Group CEO and Executive Director at Jumbo Group. And finally, Mr. Steve Lee, the Chief Information Officer and Group SVP for Technology at Changi Airport Group. So very diverse panelists really tackling this question of technology and services 4.0. Where do we go from here? Well, I'll let Ms. Jane Lim take it away. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So first, let me just introduce the panel. And we're very happy to have put together this panel this morning. First out, let me introduce Dennis. Dennis is the Executive Vice President and Head of Consumer Financial Services, Singapore, in OCBC. And he oversees a huge amount of business, including the wealth management, personal and premier banking, risk prevention, and I think there were just too many other areas in his CV that I couldn't list. So, but under his leadership, I think OCBC has introduced many new digital initiatives and seen also a very steady growth in revenue and customer base as well. And then next to him, we have Joshua. Joshua is the CEO of Commune, a Singapore-founded furniture lifestyle retail company, and he's got close to 70 stores worldwide. And he's recently been launching a new digital initiative to improve customer experience, and we're going to hear more from him later. And we have Mr. Ang Kiam Meng. Kiam Meng is the Group CEO of Jumbo. I think it must be that everybody here must have gone to Jumbo at least once, you know. If you haven't, you should. It's a household name for his seafood, amazing food, and he's been rapidly scaling and growing his business. Kiam Meng is also the chairman of the Tech Committee, the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry. But one thing that a lot of people don't know is that he was actually a software engineer. And he told me he used to work on software in fighter jets. So that's something pretty amazing. And finally, we have Steve. Steve is the CIO and the Group Senior Vice President Technology of Changi Airport Group. He's been leading the Smart Airport program and digital transformation efforts at Changi. And he's an extensive experience and such a leader in the ICT industry, and they were all fans of Changi. In fact, this morning, when we were talking, we had, as one of the key things was, last time was sense of jewel. And we just said, you know, the whole idea about our airport, bring together concepts like retail, indoor garden, as well as the airport itself. And then that's just amazing because it's blending new ideas together. So let's get going on, so what's the context here? So this morning we talked about Services 4.0, and this was part of the technology roadmap that was launched at the Singapore Digital Industry Day last year, and that identified some key technology trends, such as that companies can leverage on to think about the future of services. And it's about designing services that are end-to-end, frictionless, seamless, anticipatory, and empathic. And this morning, we've invited all of them to come share about their digital transformation journeys, and how they're delivering superior customer experiences and growing their business. So let me start off by asking each of the panelists, on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, don't be too modest. Where would you say you are in your digital transformation journey? And can you also share one impactful initiative that your company has worked on? Maybe let's start with Dennis.
First of all, a big thank you to IMDA for the invite for me to be here, as well as together with the fellow panelists. I think in terms of digitalization for OCBC, it's always thought of as a journey, not a destination, and it's constantly a work in progress. So if I were to rate it between a scale of 1 to 10, I would say personally it's probably between 7 to 8. There are lots of things yet to be done, but I think we have come quite a fair bit as well. In OCBC, one of the things that we approach it from a digitalization standpoint is thinking of it from two perspectives. One is what we call structural digitalization, and the other one from a banking perspective is digital banking. So in short, structural digitalization, think of branches, right? Things that needs to be paperless, straight through, right? Not very visible, not very sexy stuff in that sense, but things that needs to be done to get productivity going. And on the other hand, what we approach it from will be digital banking, things that we will push directly to the clients. For example, internet banking, mobile banking, having newer, smarter machines, kiosks at our touch points to better serve clients. So that's how we approach digital from that two perspectives. And your question of one clear example of how we have pushed the boundaries, I will talk about Emma. Not sure how many people in the room would have heard of Emma. Emma is our chat bot. And in short, our experience is that we can always teach the chatbot to do many things. But from our own experience, having the chatbot focus narrowly on one thing and doing it really well, training it deeply, I think that adds a lot of value to the public. So you and I know that buying a home is a joyful experience, but it can be a fantastically weird and very experience with lots of friction, because you need to calculate in terms of affordability, getting through the regulations, how much would the bank give me in terms of the bank loan, ABSD, TDSR, so on and so forth. So the chatbot, from our experience, was able to answer all of that questions very clearly to the client, and that takes away the inbound calls in the past that goes and clog up the call center, or takes up lots of time for the mortgage specialists. These are salespeople, but in the past ended up just doing the servicing to answer a lot of questions. So the whole efficiency of having the chatbot coming in, it enhances the whole experience. And we really wanted to thank IMDA as well. Late last year, working with the Digital Services Lab for Emma, we were able to then pilot a proof of concept whereby we will bring in the voice element to this chatbot. See, today the chat is text to text, but going forward, voice is a big thing. So how do we make sure that Emma is able to get instructions and converse back to the client through voice?
Including in Singlish.
Including in Singlish, absolutely, because here we read about, right, from time to time in the papers, Aljunied, Hougang, perhaps, right? But I need my Emma to be able to not say Aljunied Road or Hougang Town, right? Emma is Singaporean for us. Thank you.
That's great. I just love the fact that we have a Singaporean chatbots, right? And that's I think really the wave of that. Next up, Joshua, how do you think Commune is doing?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on Dennis's comment on how shopping for your home is it's a enjoyable experience. And then after you buy your house, you buy furniture, right? So
we should just link you guys up together now.
And usually furniture shopping is quite a painful experience, needing many trips to various shops. And the main problem is actually visualization. And I would rate ourselves as 6 to 7, mainly because we focus a lot on the start on the customer experience first, how to enhance the customer experience, but we still have a lot of work to do on the back end in terms of digitalization. What we have done so far in the last 3 years is actually using digital models to feed into our systems. We've launched VR, virtual reality, 3D floor planner solution in 2016, mainly to make the ease of furniture shopping easier. A lot of customers come to a shop and they can't visualize their home after they have bought it. They have the floor plan, but getting a realistic view of how their home will look like was a challenge. And so this 3D model system, 3D floor planner system actually allowed us to virtually create the home environment to scale, allowing us to change things like the floor color, wall color, and our products being placed in there, leading to greater confidence in their decision. But more recently, we have also launched an omni-channel platform. We hope to make the whole consumer journey seamless from offline to online to offline, and then back to online if there needs to be again. And the end goal is that customers want brands like us to know about them, not as a digital customer or a physical customer, but an integrated one. This system also helps us to integrate all our siloed systems. We used to run many siloed systems, inventory systems, delivery systems, point of sale systems, but we now have a mobile POS that links all of it together so that our transaction times with the customer can be cut short drastically, again enhancing customer experience.
And I think having seen firsthand, because we were working together with Joshua and also Enterprise Singapore, it was not an easy journey as well. We're going to come to the challenges right after this. But let me now next turn to Mr. Kim Ming, and tell us about for Jumbo. Where do you think you are in terms of digital transformation?
Well, good morning, everybody. Honored to be here. We actually embarked a lot of digitalization in our whole operations, from the beginning, from purchasing, all the way to when the customer finish their mail and go back and with the feedback to our company, it's all digitalized, right? Our major project that we have embarked in the recent year is the ERP system, which we face a lot of headwind, which we face a lot of frustration. And basically, we are looking at a paperless system for our procurement. And then with the procurement, we are able to analyze our raw material, our consumption, and together with the point of sale system, with the CRM system, we're able to analyze the behavior, the spending behavior, the customer preference and things like that. But we already hitting wall at the ERP system at the first stage. I think probably later we'll elaborate more on our personal experience. And if you're looking at Service 4.0, you asked me to grade myself, our company. I think probably we are below 5, right? I look at what the ambitious 4.0 is going to achieve. I think we have a lot to learn and a lot to explore. And we hope we can get a good vendor to help us.
Oh, you've many people in the audience I think will be willing to help you. Now, Steve, tell us about Changi Airport. Yeah.
Before I start, Kiam Ming, I just had a dinner at Jumbo. The experience was excellent.
Thank you.
So service is the service consumed by the customer, not the ERP or the whatever. So the payment was excellent, the ordering was excellent, and the food was excellent. So to me, that is real service now, not the... There are many things that lead to service. Engineering and IT is one of them, but really Services 4.0 is a mindset change about the full stack of service that is necessary to the customer. So in Changi, we really focus on service. And it's not really just technical or engineering or humans, or what you call humans serving you, but the whole stack is important for service. In Changi, I would say Changi is many businesses, but we have development business, which I won't cover, but we have two very broad businesses, which is commercial or value creation, and operational, which is like the way we run airport operations, runways. And so in the operation side, I think our digitization is quite advanced. So I would say best in class, so maybe 7, 8 or something. For the second part, which is the personalization and the part that is more retail, and I would say we are more maybe like a 5 or 4. Lots to learn, and I'm happy to listen to ideas from the crowd and audience here that may have ideas to help us, because we believe that the transformation and the journey is one where we need to tap on the knowledge and experience of the industry, and no company can do it alone. So for us, I would say, if you ask me about the one thing that I'm very proud, is this a slide that, yeah, okay. I didn't know they're going to show this slide. Okay. I think for us, the digital transformation is not about a project. It's about three things that we call the head, the hands, and the heart of transformation or digital transformation, which is first, the whole project we are very proud is first to get everybody to very clear what our strategic goals are. And that, I mean, most people will do quite well. And once you got the goals, the really difficult part that we have focused a lot on, and I'm glad to say we are quite far into this, is to change the way we work. Because from the strategy, it's very hard to get down to the heart of the people who are working every day, the people who serve the food, the people who check you in. How do you change the way we work such that all these digital ideas and practices are embedded in day to day? And finally, of course, to constantly train people, upgrade people, encourage people through training and sharing, which is the heart. So the head connected by the hands to the heart of the people who serve. Because in the end, service 4.0 is still about people serving other people, not machines serving us. Thank you.
That's great. Almost a perfect illustration of Services 4.0. I'd like to turn next to the topic of, we've talked about digital transformation, but we always say that, what are some of the challenges? And I think it would be great from the audience to hear from you personally. What is the one key challenge that you are facing or you have faced, and maybe how are some of the strategies that are doing with this to overcome it? Maybe for this, we'll turn to Joshua first, and then Dennis.
Sure. As I just completed my project, I know very well what the challenges are. And I think the number one challenge is change management with the people. My staff complain to me about how the old systems are bad and they need to change. But when I introduce new systems, they also complain that they are bad and they're hard to use. So it's about getting them on board early. I think IMDA has helped us a lot in this whole journey. We did a design thinking workshop where we brought in quite a lot of our key stakeholders, our staff, all the department heads into the whole brainstorming session. And this has enabled us to convince, not us as leaders convincing them, but the ideas come from the ground up. And this has led to a more effective and efficient rollout in our systems because the ideas came from them, they want to make it happen. Yeah. And another challenge from my past experience is integrating of systems. It's still a very painful process of getting the systems to talk to each other. Unfortunately, even though it's a lot of it is cloud-based, but still getting it to work smoothly and seamlessly is still quite a painful process now.
Absolutely. I think that's really good feedback because later on in the afternoon, we're going to have some deep dives, and I think one of them will be on systems integration and how we can actually help the demand side, the companies here. Dennis, how about for yourself?
I think for our consumer banking, the one big challenge would be culture build. Culture build over time, right? And I've seen that kind of transforming over time. What I'm trying to say here is that maybe rewind just a few years back, I hear the word digitalization a lot more compared to the word customer. I think it's organizations get into this trap, right? Project teams get together, you focus on the processes, you focus on what needs to be done, you focus on the deadlines, you focus on what perhaps maybe from a banking perspective, what the regulators want. So it's that myopic look, and ultimately we have to take a step back and remind ourselves all this digital effort it's for the client eventually. So where is the customer? Where's the focus on the customer? Where's the customer journey? Again, I know this is frequently spoken about, but until and unless the leadership and every single person in the project team constantly is reminded and understand why we are doing it. So to me, I think that would be one big challenge organizations will face, including ourselves, and how do we counter that?
Can you just give an example of how this has actually made a difference for your customers?
I think one key thing would be focusing on the customer and through the whole digitization journey, the empathy, right? The empathy, putting really ourselves in the customer's shoes. I put on this badge here. I think some of my colleagues here in IMDA would know. This badge says, "Stay true." And this is a campaign internally for our consumer bank staff at OCBC. We've been wearing this for the last 2.5 years already. Right? Not a single day do we miss wearing this. Every single day we would put on, the leadership team, the people at the touch points, branches, right? Every single colleague in consumer banking. And why? Because we want to focus ourselves and remind ourselves that we want to stay true to clients, right? So putting ourselves in their shoes, the empathy, the really customer centricity. So that contributes to the whole culture build. And I think I've definitely seen that change in the mindset and the behavior internally for my colleagues as well.
That's a really interesting part as well. So, Kim Mei, I wanted to talk about, we've talked about people, but at the same time, I think for also smaller companies, right, or SMEs, actually the tech itself is not easy. So I wonder if you could share with us a little bit about, your own experience in digital transformation.
Well, I think when you talk about customer, I think we should eventually talk about who are the final eventual user of the technologies, right? So I think what the challenge that we face is that many times IT system, when they develop, they do not have a very close understanding of the eventual user needs and wants. And eventual users sometimes, for example, for the restaurant industry, for the ERP system, we call OMS, Operational Management System. Eventually, it should be the frontliner, right? When they place order and then when they do quotations and things like that. But I think the HQ administration part mistaken that they are the end user. So they make it easy for the administration part. End up, it adds extra work to the end user. So at the end of the day,
I think we're all saying that sounds familiar.
I think at the end of the day, the end user don't feel that the IT is helping them. In actual fact, they feel that IT actually make them work more, right? So I think that's when I step in, I realized that a lot of all these things are not correctly done. And also, I think that's on our internal part. I think on the vendor part, I think what they fail to do is that to have a proper analysis on the user needs and the business processor and advise them accordingly. Right? I think that's the inexperience of the vendor that we have engaged. Right? And I think a lot of vendors in Singapore, sorry to say that, I think it is not up to mark to be a system integration house. Right? At best, I think they are a reseller. They are a good marketer for some products. But when you have a more sophisticated requirement that you put forward to them, they are not good enough to give you a solution. And I quote a very simple example. If you are a renovation contractor, you don't try to build a building, right? So I think we visualize ourselves to be an IT, to be a digitalization nation. I think the vision is big, is huge, is very inspirational. But in order to reach there, besides the user need to have the mindset, I think the IT industry need to beef up, right? And to be able to meet the ultimate goal of the vision, of the inspiration. And I think in our IT industry, I mean, I have to be very frank, I think we need to go through certain accreditation process, assessment process, to tell the grade A from grade B, from grade C, from grade D. And I think if you are just contractor, renovation, doing renovation, you don't claim yourself to be able to build a building. It is a totally different skill set, different discipline, and entirely different skill and techniques that involve. I think that's, I think I think that way, I think many of my friends or peers or other bosses, they try to be very ambitious on the IT, they always meet this problem. And a lot of this system eventually become white elephant. And the company, sad to say, like our company, we spend a lot of effort and money trying to make the system work. And actually, the source of the problem is at the very, very beginning, the analysis is not done properly, the design is not done properly, it's done haphazardly, and a lot of time, actually, the vendor underestimate the effort of implementing subsystem. And to make the thing worse, many vendors try to use the existing system, try to modify and ask you to use it without really go into analysis of how your systems should work and advise you accordingly.
I think that's definitely important and very good food for thought, because I think the ambitions are there. I think, as we said, digital is now such the key word. I think a lot of companies are now looking at that. And then the question is, how do we work as two halves of the same coin, on the demand side and the user side, to be able to realize those ambitions together? Steve, just turning to your side, can you tell us about, is there sort of a key challenge that you have been working at or have overcome? And I wanted you to speak a little bit also about, you mentioned that the workforce in Changi are undergoing agile. You are training a lot of people to undergo agile. How has that been for you guys?
So remember my slide earlier, head, hands, and heart. I think most companies struggle with the hands. Head very easy. The boss come back from read a Forbes magazine or something. We want to do this. And the boss normally know what he wants but cannot describe it, and only know it when he see it. So very difficult, it's very difficult for the IT guy, the ops guy, everybody trying to second guess the boss. So agile, I think agile is the full stack. Just as Service 4.0 is the full stack. The CEO, the ops guy, the technical guy, the process guy, everybody must be involved end to end to serve the customer. As I said earlier, in the end, when I went to the restaurant, despite what he thinks about his ERP, the service to me, including the payment, was excellent. That's all it matters to me, not the rest. So the challenge we have in Changi, obviously, is that we are, of course, by and large, a brick and mortar business trying to digitalize. So obviously, one problem is digitalization itself, because you have to spend money to either bring things online. So that's one challenge, but thankfully, we have invested way ahead 4 or 5 years ago. So today, we are ready to play the dish. So a lot of people do things like they want to do AI for advanced analytics for retail, only to realize they have no clean data. So luckily, we invested. So those challenges are over us. Our real challenge now is that, so what if you have all this stuff? Are you changing the way you work to get the full extent and benefit of what you do? So I think what Dennis and what he said about how to get this alignment between the bosses, the EVP of operations or commercial, and the IT guy in an agile way. So everybody is agile, not just the IT guy agile. Because IT guy runs the agile. The IT guy agile is like the mice on the wheel, running, only at the pleasure of the pet keeper. Once in a while, stop the cage. The guy fell down. I think that's very funny, So I think the challenge we face is to get this culture in place. Thankfully, in Changi, we have done this for about 3 years already. We organize in squads. For those who are not familiar, we adopt a Spotify model with a little bit of the AWS lean approach. We put them together, and we experiment this in the organization. So this is a macro experiment. This is an experiment on how to work. It's not an experiment of the projects, It's about how to work. And actually, over the last few years, we have got some breakthrough. In the end, the trick is always leadership. Because, for example, in this lean approach, you say, safe to fail. So don't fail. You can try, you can give data and challenge your boss. But when the project affects them, then suddenly they say, no, I think from my 5-year experience, I think the thing is not like this, So how do you create the environment for these conversations to take place? And the way we do it is in squads and tribes. And I think it's something that most organizations who want to consider digitalization, first you must invest in going digital. You must have some assets and data. But then if you want to get there, I think invest a little bit as we have, and we're still struggling with it, but invest in changing the way you work. And that includes getting the bosses and everybody aligned on common, smaller projects, but more meaningful, more useful, and then learning to work together in a way that is not traditional. I think that's the challenge and opportunity I see.
I wanted to just pick up on this point about AI, and also for yourself and Dennis. What is the right way to approach it? Because I think a lot of times people start with AI projects, everyone hears about it, but they get, it's a bit too sexy sometimes, and then you need to have some sense of reality. How would you give that advice to companies who are trying to embark on, say, their first AI project?
From our own experience, I think start small, define it very clearly, and quickly get a use case out. So I think, again, these are simple concepts, but sometimes we just busy ourselves with the entire framework, right? There are just so many problems to solve and all that. So I think as a leadership team, it's just talk to the strategy, what exactly are we going to do, and scope it out in terms of the AI projects. So that's exactly what we have been doing for OCBC. We have a AI lab. We have started an AI lab within our whole structure, and that AI lab really works with the business unit to carve out real customer problems. That means real problem statements, and we prioritize that before coming out with a roadmap to say that what are we going to tackle. So again, my response would be start small, make sure the scope is very clearly defined, and quickly get use cases out.
I'm going to put a question to any of the panel. We've got a lot of folks from the ICT industry here. How would you like them to partner more with you, to add value and to speed up your transformation?
Maybe can I start? Yeah. So I think the advice I have is that the IT vendors need to really understand the long-term objectives of the business, because a lot of times when we start a project, it's a quick fix solution. They introduce quick fixes for the current problem statement that we have, not thinking about the future use cases and the whole architecture behind it. So we have a lot of experience where we introduced a new platform that became a white elephant because it's not connected to the next platform that we're using. So look at a long-term objective. And another one thing to point out is also to understand the company deeply before you introduce, before you go into solutioning. Really know the end consumer's needs and behaviors rather than just the customer or the business's needs.
Well, I think a lot of company, especially SME or even bigger company, everyone want to get digitalized because of the manpower problem. We want to be productive and things like that. Everyone is very willing, very excited about it. But as I say, I think the vendor that we engage a lot of time put us down, right? I think it actually demoralized the whole spirit of digitalization. So if you ask me, I think in the IT industry itself, I think we really need to beef up to understand what it takes to become Service 4.0. I think it is not, you know how to do a few programming, write a few codes, and then you can design a system, you can integrate a system. I think it takes more than that. I have the privilege of working with an Air Force project many years back when I was a young software engineer. I have gone through the whole software development cycle project. Whatever we are doing now is far from, okay, that is a defense system, right? You have to be very, very precise, right? Bomb cannot drop without you pressing the button, right? Yeah, so it's an Air Force, right? You need to bring the aircraft to the right destination, right? At that time, no GPS, right? A gyroscopic system. So, yeah, but having said that, but at least help the industry, advise the industry as to how IoT can work in a very detailed way. The way I look at it is that, from my past experience, the analysis actually took a longest process of the whole project. The coding and testing is actually relatively simple if you have done a proper analysis of your system requirement and user requirement. Okay, that's what
And
I'm
I think
trying to say.
and I think that's very much also, I think what both you and Josh are saying, that you need to think about this and you need to have that vision first before you just don't just jump into the project. I would like maybe Steve to give one last thought about this. Any piece of advice? Yeah.
Coming. Bomb cannot drop while pressing button, but you can serve me pomfret for free.
Oh, I think we've just found a solution.
No, I want to make a comment on AI, which I think may be useful, because we have been on the AI journey for many years. And I myself have been dabbling with AI for almost 20, 30 years. So I have some insights that may be useful, but also useful for the partners, because that will probably be my ask of the industry. I think AI, I think as Danny said, you should focus narrowly. Don't try to boil the ocean. Try Siri, and you know what I mean. You try to solve the whole world's problem, you solve. But they are very smart, they're just getting data at your expense. But if you want to be operationally excellent, you can't just play around with people. You got to really give them things that meet their needs. So really, first thing about AI is you really need to assimilate, as a company, assimilate AI, not do AI. So how do you assimilate? One, I think, is it's beyond technology. It's the whole concept of ops. That means from what the AI did to what your call center did. If the AI chatbot don't work, do you hand over to an operator? The whole thing is important, not the chatbot. Second thing is, my belief is technology will be commoditized. So many of the things you see, some guy kind of sell you a lot of things, and some of you do also, I think. Say, wow, this thing is the best thing since sliced bread. Then, of course, really the general purpose part will be commoditized. The trick is, how can we, as an ecosystem, work together on domain problems that are relevant, localized, and useful. That's where I think the effort and investment should be, and as an industry, we should collaborate and cooperate on that. There are many problems, and the data sets are available. Is how might we apply our collective energies on it? Third one is an important question. So once you got AI, you got things, what new skill sets do you need in your company? What skill sets do you need to change? So to me, that's an important question that I'm grappling with every day. For example, I get new roles I've never thought I need. And today we are having these new roles. And I have to also get HR to agree that, sorry, I cannot JD this role, But I can work an experiment, and once we figure out what we want, that role is as we are operating. How to get HR to think like this? Agile, that means HR must be agile like IT. And the other one I already said, no data, no AI. So those who want to do AI, you better have data and have good data. If you have no data, please spend money doing data first, because otherwise AI is almost useless. And finally, I think interface and machine interface is very important. So those people who are doing interface and with data, I think Tableau and various other tools. But more than that is to help users understand what is in this black box called AI. I think there's a concept called explainability, and I think it's very important. And if you are in the industry, maybe you spend some time just working on these things, because these things will allow users of AI to assimilate it better and therefore employ it better in their work, which can be as simple as interface, or how data is presented so that a human can understand and interpret the data that's behind it. That's my final comment. Thank you.
Those are amazing and very good tips. So we've come to the end of our panel session, and I think we've covered so much, a lot of amazing insights from our panelists. I think we conclude that actually it's not the technology, it is about how you think about the business, aligning, I think, both from the IT side together with the business and the business leader. What is your goal? What is your vision? And then making sure we work closely to understand the operations, down to that level. At the end of it, I think there's a very exciting future ahead if we can all work very closely together in this ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lim, and to our panelists for a really raw session. I really liked that. You kept it real. You gave us some very good examples of pain points and how you've all worked through them. So thank you so much, gentlemen. If you could exit this side, and I really appreciate that, and thank you, Ms. Lim. It gave me a lot of food for thought, because it really started me thinking about the very basics, defining what those user needs are. Where can you add value? Because tech is supposed to solve problems, not create more problems, right? And some of the things we heard from this panel as well is, when you start small, don't think so much big picture, start small. Because in my former life, I used to work under the Chief Technology Officer at the UN headquarters, and believe me, 10 years ago, it was such a struggle. ICT was such a struggle. There was a massive shift that had to go mentally, a mental shift of adopting change, right? So start small, because My boss used to tell me the number one reason any project fails, it's because the deliverables were not defined from the beginning. When the goalpost keeps shifting, for sure, you're going to fail. You need to start small, like Mr. Koh said, and then eventually scale up from pilot scale. That's what becomes a digital champion at the end of the day. So really, really fruitful panel there. And now we are getting ready for our final panel this morning, which I think links really well with what we've been hearing. Generally, globally, there is a shortage of tech skills. We know this. So where does Singapore stand in that perspective? What are the gaps? What are the capabilities and the challenges? We're also going to dig a little bit deeper into AI. No matter where you stand, is it taking over jobs? Is it making our jobs easier? Well, we're going to find out from our panelists. And of course, leading this panel, we have Mr. Howie Lau is coming back on stage. Please welcome him, the Chief Industry Development Officer of IMDA. It's his turn this time around. And here are our panelists. Again, heavy hitting. We have Mr. Kevin Woh, the Managing Director for Microsoft Singapore. Dr. Chong Yuk Sin, the President of Singapore Computer Society. I almost called him the President of Singapore. That is incorrect. Mr. Chuck Kong Soon, the Managing Partner at Stream Global. And of course, Professor Susanna Leong, the Vice Provost at the Master's Program and Lifelong Education at NUS. Again, very, very different panelists. Very exciting to dig deep into this global shortage of tech skills and where we go from here. Thanks very much, Howie. Take it away.
Well, thanks so much. Today, the way we've assembled the panel is that we wanted to try and get a variety of perspectives. So we have Kevin with a lot of experience with MNCs, and obviously from a Microsoft perspective, Madam President. Yuxin is President of the Singapore Computer Society, right now about 51,000 members, but she's also the managing partner for iGlobe partners. We have Chuck, who has a wealth of experience with the startup scene as the managing partner in the fund, and Prof. Susanna Leong, Vice Provost from the education. So jumping straight into it, because I really enjoyed what Steve was talking about, because I mean, the reality is that as we progress, some of the things that we try and get into are things that are unknown. And I think he ended kind of saying that, you know, sometimes you don't know what the JD would be, what sort of skills would be. And we all kind of know that there is a global shortage, because wherever we go, we keep hearing the same thing, that everyone's looking for the same type of tech talent. So maybe just to kick us off, share with us your perspective in terms of given the shortage, what are areas that are key gaps that you're seeing? What are companies looking for, whether it's startups or corporates? What are some areas that Singapore is doing well? But more importantly, what are some areas that Singapore is not doing well? You can start, yes.
Okay, all right, good morning to all of you. I think the scale of the problem varies from country to country, but overall sentiment is that across the labor markets across in ASEAN, I think that the gap is rising, continue to rise. One data point to share with all of you, the hiring of the software engineer is growing at 11% faster in the non-tech space than the tech space. So what it means is a lot of our customers are also looking at and looking for resources and technical help to help them to digitally transform their business. So we are in a situation where I think we are in a war for talent, which is quite something that we need to think about here. And most of the businesses are now facing challenges in hiring these talents, but also retraining existing one, which is a big one to think about. And when we think about from a supply side, if I look at two categories, if I look at based on the World Economic Forum, they define ASEAN youth at 15 to 35 years old. Now, this group of people, I feel that I have less worry about them, because I think this group understand how technology is disrupting the way we work, the way we play, and the way we live. These people are also investing or have a keen interest in investing in skill development. And so 10% of these people are already thinking that their skills are probably outdated. About more than 50% are thinking that they need to constantly be upgrading their skills. And most of these guys are young, the youth, they are thinking of being entrepreneur, they are thinking of joining MNCs. They probably less favor the traditional SME. They prefer not to join the traditional SME. And because of their age advantage, I think most of them are also very keen to switch jobs, to pick up new skills. Now, then if you look at the other side of things, which is the PMETs, I think there's a lot of work needed to think about how they will be better able to adapt to the change and to be able to future-proof their career moving forward. And in this space, obviously, the government is spending a lot of effort in investing in PCP conversion program, helping them in staying relevant and competitive. I think in my assessment, I think the place that we need to watch is really the helping the traditional SMEs to digitalize, but also helping them to get access to talent.
Right. And from that perspective, from a professional body standpoint, what do you see?
Well, I think like what Kevin said, I think we see that there is actually an increase, right, in the number of, I think, demand from the user side of things, right? I think that is actually outpacing actually the, the demand on the supplier side, and that's quite interesting. From the SCS standpoint, right, we actually have, the TESA program that we actually implement in order to actually define the roadmap for our members, right? And we find that actually, although the TESA program is very much role-based, right, actually the skills are coming to a point where there is actually a convergence, a really defined convergence of the domain skill with the technical skills. Technical skills, I mean skills in AI are highly demanded, and definitely I think skills in even coding, right, and also network, engineering. So I think the time has come where, companies are looking at how they could digitize, and I suppose just now to the previous panel, right, one of the big problems is this, because if you are not sure as to how to digitalize, right, and to transform your organization, so there is this period where you're still finding out. And the best way to find out is to internalize, the IT operations. So, and to convert these IT skills into the new, the new digital skills that's required to fuel the new, application. So that period, I think, is upon us right now. And it's very key that actually as members, all right, of the IT profession, we should be agile, all right, and be very keen to upskill ourselves and to actually transform our previous skills in maybe more legacy system to the new one, so that we be relevant. And there's a real decided advantage to do that, because, the existing IT people in the organizations have the domain skills, and they will be actually the best to transform, only if, they demonstrate that mindset and the culture of wanting to transform. So I think that is where we are at, and this is, I think we are at the cusp, of a big transformation for both the users, right, in gaining IT skills, in gaining digital skills, and for the digital people, or the IT professions to actually embrace, right, and demonstrate and think out of the box, in order to improve the business operations using their expertise.
Yeah, Howie, your question is actually not a very easy question to answer. There are many aspects of it. I took down some notes. Minister mentioned that talent is key, and today we are fighting a global war, right, on talent, right? In my work, I get to talk to and partner with startups and SMEs, and I speak to them very often. And the biggest problem with them is actually talent, right? They are fighting with the MNCs, they are fighting with the other SMEs, for talent. Kevin mentioned correctly, the younger generation wants to work for either MNCs, right, or start their own startup. They don't want to work for another SME or startup. Right? So there is a big issue in there, right? And what we find is that the startups and the SME are going out of Singapore looking for talent, right? They're looking at talent from Vietnam, they're looking for talent from different regional countries for things that we could get relatively easier in the past, right? We could get relatively cheaper programmer. Now, with all the restrictions, right, we've been put on ourselves, right, we can't get anywhere, right? So we have to find, talents outside. Now, the problem with that is also that then what happened to our core, right? And I was fortunate in the sense that Yoksin mentioned TESA. I think IMDA started the TESA program, Tech Skill Accelerator program, a couple of years back. And we were looking, and as part of the team, looking at different skills framework that we need for our industry, right? And I think more importantly, right, we need our generation of IT professionals to continue to, have a mindset of lifelong learning, right, and a growth mindset, right? Meaning that, you need to get away from this whole entire permanency mindset. Right? In the past, we go to a job, right? We are permanently there if we do a job well, right? We get progression and we get upgraded, right? The problem today is that I don't know if that permanency is still there, right? So therefore, if you do not upgrade, right, it'll be a problem. Now, why did I say that? I mean, you mentioned earlier, you say growth is at breakneck speed, right? So I was just reading from this report, the half-life of our skill has dropped from 30 years to about 6 years. Man, in 6 years, if you think about it, right, in our whole entire career of, I don't know, 20, 30 years, we changed skill 5 times there. Right? So are we, prepared for that? And I think we have to change our mindset, from that perspective. Exactly what kind of skills we need, I think we can take a guess, right? But the ability to be agile, the ability to have continuous learning, I think is fairly critical, from my perspective.
Cool. No, I think we touched on a couple of key points, and maybe we can segue to Prof, because there are, I think, 2 things that maybe we can touch on a bit. I think the number one, the readiness and the mindset, because I think you kind of alluded that the young probably have a better mindset of continual learning, and what are you seeing from a school perspective? I think the second part that 2 of you talked about was who is more popular, because I know when I grew up it was, you go join the IBM, you join the HPs of the world, but that was the mindset. But I think we're hearing that MNCs are still cool, the large globals are still cool, but the SME and the smaller startups will probably be having a bit of struggle. Is that what you're seeing as well from the university perspective?
Well, I think I want to take up, the point about lifelong education and the importance of lifelong education, and what is NUS response to this very urgent need to develop, to produce the kind of talents that are necessary, all right, for the economy. So we all know that how fast, the technology is moving. Chuck talked about half-life of, knowledge, reducing from 30 to 6 years. But I recently heard from Huawei that their half-life is 18 months. And that, out of the 18 months, they spent 11 months training their people. And they only have 7 months left to, to begin to prepare to train the next cohort. So that's the kind of, scenario that we are operating in. So in NUS, we therefore tell our students that you are here with us for life. The concept of students for life. So students, they graduate from a program, they get a degree, but they never graduate from NUS in that sense. So when they're in school, we try to equip them with the horizontal skills, if you like, the soft skills, or the very necessary kind of skills that we want them to have, including ability to ask the right kind of questions, the quantitative reasoning skills, design thinking, and communication skills, being a team player, having the cultural quotient, etc., etc. And then the deep set of skills that they require, whether they are going to be engineers, whether they're going to be software engineers, whether they're going to be a lawyer, they're going to be a doctor, and so on. And then we think that, you just can't have one leg, all right? You maybe you should have a minor in something else.
so that, you will be able then to have, the ability to adapt, to be resilient, because much as we like to predict what happens in the future, we can't do all the predictions for our students, and they very much need to do that on their own when they're out there. But whilst they're out there, we tell them that NUS is with you all the way. At every stage of your career, we will be there. So we set up the School of Continuing and Lifelong Education in 2016, and then we rolled out programs since last year when I took office, looking after the master's program and lifelong education. So we unbundle, all right, programs, modules from our programs, and we offer standalone modular programs for our alumni to return, to upskill, to retool, and so on. At the same time, we roll out short courses, all right, for instantaneous type, of knowledge that, executives and business people require, so that they come back for very short duration and they get the kind of knowledge they need so that they're able to go back to work, to the workplace, and then continue to contribute very meaningfully. So we create multiple pathways for our students and for our alumni and also for the public, and we try our very best to make them as future ready as we can. Yeah.
So it sounds like you are on the same page as Kevin, that both of you feel that the young is more prepared, but perhaps the rest of the ecosystem needs to get more anxious about the 18 months of half-life. So maybe let's segue into that, because, thinking about it, because last year I tried to learn Haskell, because my daughter was doing her first year and she was struggling with Haskell. So I kekiang lah. So I was like, since I did programming before, I says, let me go to Udemy, take a course on Haskell. And then lo and behold, despite the motivation, I couldn't finish the course because functional programming is really quite obtuse. So everyone talks about continual learning, but your thoughts in terms of how best do you get this into a habit? Because it's easy to say, but I've personally found it extremely hard to learn new skills. And now I'm panicking because 18 months is very fast. Your thoughts, any advice in terms of how do we get this into a culture? How do we help people really want to continually train?
Okay. Maybe I'll share how does Microsoft think about culture and a learning culture. So our culture is very much grounded on the notion of a growth mindset. I mean, can't talk about it just now. And it's about a passion to learn and a passion to better ourselves to make a greater impact in the world that we are operating in. And when we talk about growth mindset, it's about to move from a know-it-all culture to one that is a learn-it-all culture. How do we move from a fixed mindset and only focusing on your own success to one that is embracing challenge, and then the one that is thinking about focusing or helping others successful as well. How to move one from afraid to take risks and fail to one that we celebrate risks, small and large. I think those are very important elements when we think about culture change and a learning culture. One very important aspect within Microsoft that we put a lot of emphasis is on leadership development, which is on how do we train our managers to be more coach-like. Let me tell you elaborate a bit more about what I mean by a bit coach-like. Most managers like us, because of our years of experience, we tend to want to be advice monster, because we want to give advice very instantly because we want to look smarter than our colleagues, right? To tell them about what to do or how to go or where to get help. But I think the new way of learning is about making sure we stay curious a little longer, hold back our advice a little bit longer, and allow the individual to explore, to discover, to think about the option, think about the solution themselves, and help them in that whole process. And in Microsoft, we actually put in place a program to help our managers to be more coach-like. And it's now becoming an essential leadership development skills that we all need to embark on and to nurture future talents.
Yeah, on the SCS side, I'd like to explain the three aspects that we do. One is the students, right? So for the students, we want to actually expose them, to the life of being an IT professional. So there are many programs that we do that actually does that, starting with people from, the polytechnics, universities, as well as now we're going to schools, to start them early. So there's one, exposure to the IT industry. But the other aspect we're doing for the existing IT professionals, right, is that we actually focus on micro-certification. So, understanding that it is, for example, for lifelong learning courses and CET courses, right, that's offered by the universities and poly. The problem is that they may last for, they may take a long time to complete, right? But what everybody wants is actually bite-sized learning. And it's possible to do that because there's online learning, there's also bite-sized classroom learning for a shorter period, and all that will contribute to your ultimate kind of a nano degree. So in SCS, we're actually furthering, right, the idea of the micro certification for our professionals. The third category are actually, I initially mentioned, right, our IT professionals who perhaps, have got too embedded, with the day-to-day work, right, and also embedded and wedded to those skills. So we do have a Compass program, right, mentoring program that we call Compass, that actually helps our professionals to actually basically find their way, right? Should it be through maybe, they need a change of job, or hopefully, or maybe they need to actually accelerate some of the, the key skills that they have, right, and to acquire other skills. So within the SCS, we are constantly very mindful, of this need for agile learning and lifelong learning. And as Susanna mentioned, whatever skills or whatever learning that we had from the university only prepares us to learn for life, right? It only gives us a method to learn. Outside of it, the learning continues in the workplace and all that. So in SCS, we try to actually emphasize this through programs, and I think we work very closely with IMDA as well, to try to actually make these programs affordable for the employers as well.
So it sounds like it's a combination from a company standpoint, creating the culture of learning, I like the one that is about from knowing it all to learning it all. I think for an individual is to make use of all the programs that's available, including bite-sized training and all. Chuck and Prof, maybe I switch gear a little bit because Chuck, you work with a lot of startups, and you mentioned that it's hard to attract talents for startups. So what are some advice that you give them, are ways to try and attract? And I think from a Prof standpoint is that based on what you see, do you see a shift in the trends of type of companies that the graduates like to go into? And is that something that we should be, as an industry, be thinking about as to how to make sure that they are exposed and potentially interested in a wider range of offerings beyond that, I want to get to the usual Googles and the Microsofts. So maybe those two questions.
Well, from the SME and staff standpoint, it's always a demand and supply, right? The demand is that, the organization always wants today's skills, right? So therefore, we're all fighting for today's skill, right? But we have a lot of yesterday's skills that can be trained for today, right? So that's one thing I'm asking them to look at, right? And when they look at me, I tell them, look, I am myself a relic in a tech space, right? I've been working in the industry for 3 decades because I started at 12, right? And the skills have changed 5 times, as I mentioned, right? But I can still help you as a startup, right? Because while I don't have the experience in what you have in terms of social network savvy and whatever it would be, right? I have other skills which I can bang on to really help you, right? Now, it doesn't mean that, I, like Calvin saying, right? Doesn't mean that I straight away tell you, you should do this, you should do that, right? But, in order for me to let me give you an example, right? It's no difference from Kevin talking about a growth mindset in the past and in now, right? In the days where, I was running and doing my business fervently, right? The thing to do is to play golf, right? So the question then is that if you really want to go close the business, you need to play golf. So what do? You read about golf, you go and practice, you talk, you go and watch who's the number one, which is Tiger Woods at that time, you know, and then you talk the same terms that everybody's talking about, right? Am I good in golf? No, man, right? I'm still struggling, severely handicapped.
That one I can test to is quite bad, yeah.
So, but what I can do is that I can hit the ball almost the same direction as my client. And that's all I need, right? So I just walk with him and say, hey, how are this business, you know? And I get 4 hours with him, right? So today there's not much difference, right? I mean, why do I have to continuously learn and play golf, right? I mean, I can be good in my business and I get my deals, right? The answer is no, man. Right? You can't do that, you know? It's not enough. So therefore, you know, in terms of encouraging two sides, one is to start to look at, hey, who are the guys that are out of the box that you are looking at? Perhaps is a little bit more mature, right? Perhaps, you know, he can add other experiences that the young current people can't. That's number one. And number two, on the mature worker side, we must keep up with what's happening, right? You don't have to be an expert. So for example, if you want to go into data science, right, you better know what is Kaggle, right? You got to go and find out what those things are, right? So therefore, it is not just that you've got to be very good at programming, right? Very good to compete with the new skills that's coming out today, but really, you know, rely on your old skills and look at where you can add value. And some of those things, you know, we talk about AI replacing everybody else, right? Some of those skills AI can never replace. Things like, you know, creative problem solving, right? Leadership, right? Communication, right? Those are, you know, no way AI could replace those stuff, right? So therefore, my view is that there's huge opportunities out there for both, you know, the hirers as well as the job seekers, right? As long as they are aligned.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. And Prof, your views?
Well, our students, I think they still like to go to the big companies, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if they offer, you know, impactful, meaningful, you know, employment opportunities for them, I think our students do want to go to these companies. But we also see increasing number of students wanting to do their own business, wanting to, you know, be in a startup. And we have a very successful program, the Overseas College Program. We have been running that, I think, for more than 10 years. And we have a very sizable alumni, all right, under this particular program. And we have overseas colleges in more than 11 destinations in the world, and recently set up one in Jakarta. We have now one in Shenzhen. In fact, I just got back from Shenzhen and met a group of students who are in the NOC programs. These are students who are willing to go out of their comfort zone. These are students that have an idea that they want to hopefully, all right, through the program, all right, be able to then later on have it, you know, incubated, all right, and then, you know, be their own bosses. So we do see that particular trend as well. But in all of this, I think our students now are very well aware that they need to equip themselves with not only the hard knowledge, so to speak, but certainly very much so in the soft skills, and certainly digital skills, I think, is almost like a hygiene factor now. That's something that they need to have. Yeah.
Actually, just a thought. Maybe we should challenge our organizations, right, to have at least some 60, 70 years old in the organization. Because in a few years, right, that will be the market, you know, not so long. Because every country is aging, you know, in this whole entire region, right? And the biggest spender is probably the 60, 70 years old.
No, it's true. I mean, there are conversations in the industry that talks about digital is ageless because as a tool, I think Steve mentioned, is democratizing, which means that regardless of language, race, or religion, or age, or gender, digital is an enabler. So I think I'm mindful of time. We touched on a couple of things. I think there's, in view of the shortage, it's going to be quite a fair bit of work because it's on the company side in terms of creating opportunities for the learning, a lot of work on the individual side. It sounds like the pipeline coming in is probably more prepared because of their grounding and they are more immersed in today's expectations of continual learning. There's probably a lot more work that needs to be done in terms of the rest of the workforce. I like your framing of yesterday and today. So maybe just to close off, we think about yesterday, today, let's talk about tomorrow. What is your short advice to companies here in terms of looking at talent, whether it's from an individual standpoint or from a company standpoint, as they look at talent in the future, tomorrow? Advice must be short.
Well, I'll start first. I think we have some recent examples where companies are coming forward and making the investment on scaling. I think that is a big step forward over the next 3 years where companies are taking that investment ahead to invest in building this capability within the organization. And we also have to start recognizing that while we are developing, we got to bring in and augment our team with the right talent from outside so that we can continue to drive those innovation and accelerate that digital innovation within our company. So I think that will be my ask.
So
for more companies coming forward to do that.
To build and augment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think from my side, I think got 3 advices, at the risk of talking about advice, right? Today. For today, I think be open, right? Key is just get and I think what Chuck said is true. There's lots of solutions coming out from startups as well. So include the startups, right? Include your so-called traditional source of suppliers, and also your internal people. I think it's to get mostly the internal people trained, and digitally savvy. That's for today. Tomorrow is really about together. I think in the afternoon we have this together, right? So tomorrow, really, whether you're a domain person or whether you're IT, I think the worlds have converged. And one of the key things that we do in SAS is actually to converge them by having affiliate, accountant societies with us so that we co-learn, the digital space together. So the answer for me tomorrow is together.
I think I will follow Kevin's advice to hold on advice first.
No, this is coaching. This is coaching.
Well, basically, I think the thing that I would do myself is really, for myself, is I will keep in touch with what's happening, right, in the world. And for the organizations, actually, the whole entire digitization is about convergence, right? So therefore, like Yok-Sin say, those are things that we really have to take into consideration going to the future.
And Prof?
Well, I would recommend that, companies must think of reinventing themselves and reinventing themselves often. And because companies must reinvent themselves, the individual in the company must reinvent themselves and reinvent themselves often. And they can only do this if they have an open mind, they're willing to be thrust into the uncertain environment and to learn continuously. So that would be my recommendation to the company.
Well, thank you so much, because I think we're short of time, but this topic of talent is an important one. I think hopefully this discussion will spur a few thoughts in the head, whether you're a company or individual, in terms of what does it take to continually stay relevant and to tap on the opportunities that's available. So please join me to say a big thank you to our panel members. And before you go, I just like to add one additional point, because Yok-Sin talked about together, and one of the things that we wanted to also just share, because on the data protection side, in earlier part in July, what we did was that we announced the competency framework, because data protection is important to all the companies out here. And today we are also very excited to be sharing that together with our partners from Accenture, EY, KPMG, as well as PwC, we're doing a collaboration in terms of further training under the company-led training program under TESA to do more data protection training as well. So we're hopeful that a lot of the stuff we're doing is done together with the industry as well as different parts of the little village that we're growing together. So with that, thank you so much, and look forward to further conversations in the breakout session. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. What a great panel. Thank you, Mr. Lau, for leading that. A lot of insight there, and certainly a lot of food for thought this morning. Reinventing your business, I think, is really key. Disrupt yourself before somebody else does, and keep learning. And honestly, we learn by doing. So take a stab at it and see where it takes you. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our morning session. Thank you so much for being a part of SGD Industry Day. Like I mentioned earlier, there are still many opportunities to grow, to meet people, to connect, to discover some new technologies outside in the exhibit area, so we encourage you to do that. And of course, from 1:30 p.m. onwards, up on or down in level 3, we do have a few discovery hour sessions. We actually have a signage at the IMDA booth if you want to find out what are those sessions, what's relevant to me, so that you can curate your journey with us today. That would be fantastic. They're going to happen at level 3, different rooms, but I think you can get all of that information at the IMDA booth. And that is it. Thank you so much for your attention and for your patience, and you've been absolutely swell. Hopefully you'll be able to take a lot of this with you today. Don't forget to hashtag SG Digital and of course SGD Industry Day. Thank you IMDA for having me, really appreciate it. My name is Nikki Mueller. Happy lunch. It's time to makan officially. Bye-bye, thank you.